Our host, the world-renowned Christine Enville, an IFBB professional, 3 times world champion, a mentor, an icon, and of course, a founding co-owner of the best supplements money can buy, International Protein. In this podcast, we get deep into what Christine's training schedule looks like, how often she trains, how long, what muscle groups on which days. We also ask for loads of detail on how she eats and if that changes when training her back versus a heavy leg day. Okay, today we want to hear about your routine, Christine. Like, how often do you train? I want to get detailed on this. How long, what muscle groups and when, but I also want to know what you eat on those days, how often and what time. So what happens on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? What does it look like?
Okay, well, I'm not going to talk about now because obviously what I'm doing during COVID is a little bit different, and I actually want to talk more about what I used to do when I was competing, because to me, the main difference might be between your comp prep and your off season, like how that differs between, how much you train and what you might be eating. But I also want to talk about when I was younger. So let's say that period of my 20s through to my 30s when I was competing, as opposed to my late 30s through to my 40s when I was competing, because there were some significant differences in how I trained during that period. So that might be more interesting to people than my little, I'm doing civilian training at the moment, 3 days a week with weights and 4 days a week with cardio, so that's about enough on now.
Okay.
So I'm going to take you back to probably the mid '90s when I was considered Australia's most muscular woman, and I was training really to put on size.
Showing your age there, but Christine.
I am, and I'm very proud of my age. Because I'm 47, but I'm looking forward to being 50.
Good on you.
And being fitter than what I am now. So, but that's on another note. So anyway, when I was competing, there would literally be obviously a comp season and then an off season. So the training would literally be the same in terms of the pattern. I would train 6 days a week with weights. So the difference, obviously, cardio would be different off season to on season back then, but I'll focus on the weight training to start off with. So I would work on a 3-day cycle. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would cover my entire body. So for example, we would train legs on one day, we would train back and triceps on another day, and I would do chest, shoulders and biceps on the third day, which is a very big workout.
And was that routine and pre-planned? So every
Yes.
Monday you're on legs?
Yeah, I'm going to go back, and Saturday was actually always legs.
Yeah, okay.
And Sunday was always back. And then Monday obviously was the chest, biceps and delts routine.
So you never left it to decision on the day as to what you felt like you needed to work? No. Always pre-planned?
Yeah. Yep. When I was training to compete, there was obviously really specific goals in mind. Like I needed to, gain size in my off season, and I needed to, obviously cut up in my comp season. But getting size was always the focus. I wasn't trying to maintain. I was literally trying to grow as much muscle as possible, and then I was trying to retain as much muscle as possible. So just contrasting to when I was older, what I changed really was I would do 1 body part per day, whereas back in those days I could handle doing 3 body parts in one day, or a big leg session, legs, and that means quads, hamstrings, calves, glutes, all in one day. So that's some very, very big workouts. That's why it was a Saturday, because obviously I could recover. I didn't have to go to work or anything like that. And the same thing with back. We used to do up to 7 or 8 different exercises. That's 4 sets per exercise. So very, very high volume training with as heavy weight as possible. And I found that that's what my body needed to really keep it volumized. And when I look back at photographs, it definitely was very volumized back in my 20s. When you get older, you generally can't tolerate that type of training volume. You overtrain a lot more quicker because obviously your whole body hormonal system has changed by the time you're in your late 30s and 40s, and the propensity for injury, but also just that recovery time is vastly different when you're older. So whilst I still trained that 6 days a week, the cycle was more like quads on one day, hamstrings on another day, biceps and triceps on another day, delts on another day, chest on another day, back on another day. So it was all split up, and I really, in that instance, it was still a cyclic pre-planned. Like we didn't kind of walk in the gym and go, what do I feel like today? I always knew, okay, I'm doing back today, I'm doing whatever today, but it was worked in such a way that I think I ended up with 5 working days rather than 6 as I got older, or one of those days was kind of like to me, a small muscle group, like just hamstrings on its own isn't really that big. So the volume of work definitely went down because the recovery just wasn't there. Now, coming back to the comp side of it, when I was younger, if I didn't train that 6 days a week, like if I did think, I'll see what happens if I do 5 days a week, I would find that my body weight wouldn't come down. Like it would, even if I was dieting and doing my cardio, my body weight would just hang on. Like the body was so good at recovering in those earlier years. So I guess my advice to people is if they are younger and they are training, like without going crazy, it's definitely the time when you can really push your body. So if an older person's kind of telling you, you only need to do 4 days a week and, be careful of this, be careful of that, that is great. And you do need to be mindful of injury and overtraining, but they forget that at that age they could tolerate a lot more. So you do need to take advantage in your younger years of what your body will handle, and really that's the opportunity to grow and lay a really good foundation. So without going crazy, you can train heavier, you can train longer, you can do more volume than what you can as an older person. So whilst you're fitter as you're older, the body still does have a slower recovery process. So if you want to kind of, I guess, recover and grow as an older person, you do have to put more rest days in. You do have to be more focused on your training in terms of more specific exercises. You can't just hit it with everything. You have to be very selective and say, choose, one for each angle that you want to do on chest and do that. And then, give it the appropriate rest. Whereas when you're younger, you could probably chuck an extra couple of exercises in and not even notice, or you'll notice in growth, but you don't feel like you're fatigued and you're really not ready to train. So essentially, younger days was 6 days a week with 1 day rest, and then as I got older, I would do things like a 3 day on, 1 day off. 3 day on, 1 day off, and put that extra rest day in and reduce.
At what age was that?
That was when I made my comeback kind of like 38, 39. Because I competed from my early 20s through to my early 30s. And then for various reasons, to start the business and focus on other things, I took some time off training. I'm not training, I took time off competing. I was still training. I had the intention that I was probably never going to compete again, but I got the bug. But then I realised that I did have to change how I was training so that I didn't, really injure myself. I could do that kind of training, but the result of that was I ended up tearing my tricep off. It was right. I was trying to train at that higher level, like I was trying to train like I was in my 20s, and I was stronger. No doubt I could do some like crazy kind of lifts, but in hindsight, it was probably I could have achieved the same thing a different way, and I could have not damaged my body in that way by doing some tears, and obviously later on my delt. And that's, I say, it comes back to then being more creative with what you're doing. And back then I was still trying to hit that same 10 reps, 4 sets, get heavier with every set. Like that's the traditional bodybuilding way. You start off with a set, you go a little bit heavier on the next set. Next set's kind of your natural limit, and then I guess your fourth set is your forced reps, where you've got your training partner helping you to go a little bit heavier, or you're only getting 6 reps, depending on what the exercise is. Obviously some are easy to spot, other ones you might cheat a little bit on those later reps. So the system of training was very traditional back then. It was definitely that 4 sets, going for 10 reps, not less than 6 reps, really not more than 12 reps, like keeping in that very, very tight range, and then contrasting to, as I've got older, I found that I could do more drop sets. So we might do something like start on a weight which was quite heavy that you can only get 4 or 6 reps on, quickly drop down and do one that you're getting another 6 reps on, and then drop down again and rep out on 10 or 15 reps. So all up, you're looking at doing over 30 reps in that set. Some heavier than what you could handle, and then finishing off with a pumping set to keep that blood in the joint and keep that blood in the muscle. So the style of training changed a lot, but the sequence of, I dropped from 6 days back to probably 5 days a week in terms of the weight training aspect of it.
Okay, so can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
When you're in your 20s, what did you do on Monday?
Monday was always chest, biceps and delts, but we would do delts first, so that would pre-fatigue, so that when I would go to do chest, it was already quite fatigued. So essentially, if I had started off with chest, I would have been a lot stronger, but obviously the body recognises like it's already had a certain amount of work done on it, because you can't isolate your chest when you're doing delts. So therefore, I didn't have to go as heavy on chest, but it still got the same kind of stress. And then we'd finish off with biceps. And if anyone's ever done that, it's an absolutely massive workout. And I look back now and I wonder, how on earth did I do that? But, it was just pure determination if I had a goal, and that was what I was going to do. So we would do anywhere from 4 to 5 exercises per body part. And, we'd do that with 4 sets of each one. So it was very high volume. So then Tuesday would be legs, because it'd be back to legs from Saturday, and Tuesday would be legs.
Yep.
Sunday and Wednesday would be back, and then Monday and Thursday would be the chest, delts and bis. And then normally I would take Fridays off, because by the end of the week I'd be absolutely wrecked.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Friday was your rest day.
Yeah. So, but I've generally always trained over weekends, because I feel like I'm not rushing. Like, I have all the time. I don't have to worry about, being late from work, or, something getting stuck in traffic, or in the morning sometimes you can't get to work on time because you've got a certain amount of time that you need to train.
Yeah. So were you training in the morning or in the evenings?
In the younger years, I was training in the evening, so we would train after work.
Yeah.
And that was one thing. I remember I was one of those people who, as soon as it was like 5 o'clock, you did not even see me. Yeah. I was out that door.
You're one of those clock watchers.
I was a clock watcher.
You were working for somebody else, weren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, people knew the time by what time I was eating my meals, because the dietary side of it was very regimented. I would eat meals at specific times to suit my training. Obviously, if I needed to leave work at 5 o'clock and I would be at the gym by, say, 6 or something, then I would be eating normally in the car on the way home. Because that to me was the right timing for that. So I would always work my meal plan around where I had to train. So obviously, you wake up, you do fasted cardio. So breakfast would be straight after fasted cardio. And then I would look at what time I had to train, and then I would have 2 more meals in between, and I would try to slot them at convenient spacing. So I'm not a 12 o'clock luncher. Sometimes it's 1:30, sometimes it's 1 o'clock. But always at that same time if it is that time. But that's all based on when my pre-workout meal is going to be. So like right now I might eat 11 and 2. So I have 2 lunches.
Right.
But, that's because that works out with what my breakfast time is and when I train and how everything fits together.
And are you really firm on those times?
Not now. Like now, when I was back then, I was.
Yep.
But what I would do when I was dieting is sometimes I would try to push it like a 15-minute to give myself that ability. If something went wrong, that I wouldn't melt down, because I know people in bodybuilding who, if they miss a meal by 5 minutes, they go into like stress mode. Right. And you don't want to be in stress mode. So I did kind of test myself a little bit, like, okay, I won't ever eat earlier. And then some days there are those days where you're like looking at the clock every 30 seconds coming up to a meal time.
Yeah, you're hungry.
Yeah. But other times I would try to push it just to I guess it's that like mental mind discipline games that you kind of play. So I would try to sometimes push it, but obviously then I wouldn't want to bring it too close to my next meal, and I wouldn't want to mess up the whole purpose of doing that, which is to have that even delivery of energy throughout the day and have the carbs at the right time and always have protein in my system. So I wouldn't mess around with it too much, but obviously, as I said, sometimes things go wrong and you don't want to be in that situation where one little thing goes wrong and that you pretty much lose it for the day. And that's when people want to, go off the diet, and that's when people want to do crazy things. And, when you're getting ready for a show, it can be those days where you think, like, why am I doing this? And I just want to give it up. And if something throws you off and you're not able to deal with that, then those are those days when people tend to go out and cheat or, throw it in. Like they might basically, I'm not competing, and then 3 days later they regret that because they did want to compete and it was just a moment that they were having. Obviously in the off season, it's less important to be so regimented, but regiment to me is still part of getting that result, because if you're not consistent, and this is what it really comes down to, is consistency. If you're not consistent, you're not going to get the true results, or you're not going to get your best results. So even in the off season, you don't want to slip into a mode of, I'm not prepping, so yeah, I can just kind of eat whatever or at whatever time, because that's when it's, more important to make sure you are getting those calories in, you are getting the protein in, so you need to kind of still structure that. And I would always have like a baseline where I would say if I don't eat below this, I'm good, and then I would put extra snacks in over and above that, because like that's the fun part. If you don't have those, you're going to go crazy. So then, but I would never go below a baseline. So I'd work out a baseline diet. So that essentially was the, the difference between on season and off season. When I was younger, I would literally probably cut out my cardio in the off season. which as I get older, definitely not. Like that was something which came with me on season or off season. I would always be doing cardio, and that's really, really important as we get older that we do keep that in, because so many of the effects of aging are actually reversible or held, or you can hold them steady by doing exercise. So to kind of do weights is one part of the equation, but cardio and weights go together in ultimate fitness. And obviously, you know, with promoting anti-aging and stuff like that, you need to do both. But when I was older, I actually went through a period of training in the mornings. When I was younger, the thought of training on an empty stomach or of not having had much food and getting in the gym and doing weights was a horrible thought.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't imagine doing the kind of weights that I was doing without having like some really solid meals and obviously waking up for the day. So I did go for a couple of years where I was training early in the morning. So I would actually do a cardio session, have breakfast, and then go to the gym. So I was packing all of that in. And I think it was only because of my time in the sport and my fitness that I could actually do that. I adapted to it, but I must say I definitely am an afternoon trainer. Like when it comes to weights, if I have my choice, I would always do my cardio in the morning and then do my weights in the afternoon. So having done both, because I know it's funny because when you do go to the gym, it's always the older people that are there in the morning.
Yeah.
Like you don't see a lot of young people that do like to get in and do their weights. And maybe it's just the gyms I'm going to. People might be saying, no, I'm 25 and I go at 6 a.m. But just, you know, as a generalization, what I have noticed, you do see in the afternoon is when you do see a much younger crowd. And as I said, if you're trying to make the most out of your ability to grow muscle, I would say, you know, train on a good few meals and don't try to do it on an empty stomach. But if you're just maintaining and just trying to be fit, morning or afternoon, you know, that it's fine. It's whatever works into your day.
So how long are your training sessions?
Okay, so...
And sorry, before you answer that, do you sort of include a warm-up and a warm-down as, like, religiously? It's, like, super important to do that? Or I bet when you were 20 you didn't. That's my guess.
When I'm 20, when I'm 47. Look, the thing is warming up is really, really important. But... like on legs days, yes, definitely we'll do like 5 minutes on the bike to get some blood into the muscle. But I guess I always worked my warm up into my training system. So I wouldn't be walking in doing chest and jumping straight onto the bench press and trying to do 2 plates aside. Like that just doesn't happen. So we'd always structure the training so that, you know, you might start off on something which did warm up the muscle. Like I remember at one point we were doing about 7 or 8 sets on the leg press, very, not heavy, but, you know, really warming up and working up and doing ones which were like very, very light, but just to kind of like to me, stretching and everything like that for weight training was great, but I really actually like to sort of warm up on the actual exercise because you're specifically warming up the joint that's about to do the work. You're priming that muscle that's about to do the work. So, yeah, I can go in and stretch and do some random thing which generally works that area, but what if there's a little part of your hip flexor that you missed that is actually involved in that exercise? So I always would prefer to go and maybe do 2-3 warm-up sets on the actual exercise that I was about to do, because that's pre-stretching the muscle, it's getting the blood into the muscle, it's also getting your balance and your coordination and everything set for that. So people, I think, underestimate how much coordination you actually need for weight training. If you're only using machines, I guess it's not as important because you are pretty much in a fixed line of motion. But if you're squatting or even benching and you haven't got your coordination, like if you ever see a person who's never bench pressed before and you watch them and you see like one side comes up and the other and they like almost walk the press up instead of a nice smooth press. Or if you've ever done an isolateral leg extension, like one of the Panada ones, I think it might be Hammer Strength has one now, where the legs work separately. And if you try to bring both legs up together and you've never done it before, you realize that you do have different strength in both sides of your body. So, you know, to me, it was really important to kind of get physically set for that exercise and actually warm up that motion, particularly around the free weight exercises. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then you can be out of balance. Something's not quite sitting right, but you've had that opportunity to really kind of set your muscles into that position. So to me, that kind of warming up always happened as part of the workout. I didn't kind of go off to a stretching mat, do a separate thing and then come and start my weights. So that was how we handled it. And I still essentially do handle my weights in that way now, because I believe like if I'm going to be stretching my chest doing a fly, I would rather do it with some actual lightweight in that exact motion And then I'm also feeling what things I might have niggles in, what things I should be watching out for when I am going heavier. Yeah. Also judging if, and this is now me, smarter person, not me who just figured I had to kind of do that weight because that was what I had set down to do. Feeling if I do have a niggle or an injury and I might have to be adjusting what weight that I do. Like now I might feel something and think, okay, I need to do some higher reps today, or maybe I need to do some slower reps. Maybe I need to do something a little bit different because I am not going to be able to go really heavy today because I'm feeling my tendons. Younger me had the attitude, if I do not do this weight today, I'm going to shrink.
Yeah, right.
And, felt that volumization through just sheerly heavy weight was important. Mm-hmm. But those are some of the things around warming up. Now, when I do my cardio session, though, I will actually warm down after a cardio session, which is interesting because there's two schools of thought. Apparently you're not supposed to. You're supposed to do like dynamic stretching after you've been warmed up.
Yeah.
But I think I find just even the stretching out and stretching down. So I would, if I'm doing electronics or something, I'd finish off with abs and then finish off with a stretching session because I use the abs as a cool down. And that's actually the same thing with my weight training. I did abs every single day at the end of a workout for about 5-10 minutes. And to me, I didn't every single day because with abs, that's not a muscle group that you want to train with weight. Like I see people kind of doing weighted crunches and that it's a muscle group that you don't want to build up because you want to keep your torso very tapered and very thin and very flat. And whilst you want to have the ab block showing, you don't want to have really thick obliques and you don't want to create too much muscle in that area. So I would do like 100 rep sets, little circuits of 5 different ab movements, one after the other. So I just do like 100 reps in a row of 5 different exercises. Always at the end of my workout, then I'd always stretch my lower back because I've had lower back problems from the early days of not knowing what I was doing.
Yep.
Always had a little stretching routine that I would incorporate at the end of every weight session, regardless of what body part I did.
Yeah.
But obviously more so on legs day, I would incorporate a little bit more stretching around my legs. But chest and things like that, I have not cooled down so much on. But it's one of those things where if I was still going a lot heavier now, I would probably do that because I do sort of see the older bodybuilders who are still training very heavy. They will, make sure everything's stretched and primed, and there's not going to be any surprises because that's what you don't want. You don't want that surprise, which is like, oh crap, did I just rip something?
Yeah.
So that I guess that covered a lot of the training side of it, but the eating side of it.
Hold on, before we move on, how long were your training sessions?
Oh, sorry, I didn't answer that. As long as they needed to be.
It's either you didn't answer it or I wasn't listening. One of the two.
No, I think I didn't specifically answer it because I remember back in the old days, as I said, that was quite a big volume.
Yeah.
To do those 3 body parts on one day, so that would be about a 2-hour session. My legs was about a 2.25 to 2.25 to 2.5 because that was quads, hamstrings, calves. Glutes wasn't done as a separate body part back then. And then my the back day would probably be 1 hour and 3/4. So that is, at that age group, I think that's appropriate. You can do that, but it comes with fitness. I had a lot of people who used to come train with us, like legs, for example, and they would pull the pin after quads.
And you'd be eating during your training, obviously.
No.
No? Nothing?
No. No. Now, this is a thing where as a younger female, my metabolism wasn't super fast. I wasn't one of those people who just dropped the weight off really, really quickly. So I didn't need to eat during a workout. And this is because I felt like I had eaten the right food beforehand and I had something to have afterwards, and my body would do that. Now, if I'm training with a male bodybuilder and we're doing the same kind of volume in our workout, whether it would be my first trainer, he used to do it, or whether it's, Brandon does it, they would often stop between the body part changeover and have carbs and amino acid type of products. So they might have amino recovery with carbs and have that with them and do a restorative thing. Back in the old days before supplements, my trainer, he used to bring, I can't remember what he used to have, but he always would have some kind of carbohydrate where he would eat that during the session.
Right.
So, or maybe sometimes I would do something like that, but not if I was prepping, definitely not. And if I was off season, like I say, I never really felt the need to, because I felt there was enough stored in my body from being in the off season that I didn't have to worry about that. So, in between one of those sessions, no. Now, going back a bit, a lot of the supplements that we have now weren't available back then. Like, people didn't branched chain aminos. Yes, I would take them straight after my workout, like the good old Masashi Gray. I would take that in maybe like a 12 to 15 gram dosage. I wasn't taking just a teaspoon that it said. Like everything that I ever learned early days in supplements was whatever they put on the packet is, because that's what you're allowed to say, or that's what we economically say. Because if you tell someone, no, you have to actually take 20 grams of this and you're going to run out of it in 3 days, or you're going to run out of it in 10 days, not a month. A lot of people would get put off that. But when you are, competing at a high level and trying to get the most out of your body, then you will do, pretty much whatever it is that you need to do. And when you're sponsored, you can afford to do that. So I would always have a hell of a lot of branched chain straight after. But a product like Amino Recovery, which has all the essentials that, all the essential amino acids that you need to recover, that wasn't available. If it had been available, I would have taken it. And obviously once I was training as an older person, then yes, definitely I would have that straight after. You can have it during, but I'm a person who likes to drink water when I train. I don't really like having anything which leaves any kind of sweetness or anything in my mouth. I find that just doesn't sit well with me, whereas other people need that. Like I find some people need to have like a sort of like a carbonated type of beverage when they drink, or they need to have one of the, the RTD type, energy drinks or something like that you can buy at the gyms. But I just need water. So I prefer to just have that and then have something to recover straight afterwards. But now as an older person, I try to keep my sessions not more than an hour and 3/4, and kind of bring them back to an hour and a half. If they were to go longer than that, they would be at a much lower intensity. Like it would only be because I was resting more between sets. So the volume of work has come down significantly. Or if I am doing it, that I'm, taking more time between each set, or, between a body part, but I didn't, like I say, I kind of stopped splitting my body parts and I would just focus on one. So I would try to minimize the amount of time that I was actually spending in the gym. But, when I was younger, those sessions weren't slow by any means. Like they were fairly full on. And as I said, we had a few training partners who kind of would get a mystery phone call and have to leave partway through when they were like, nah, enough. But, it's something that you adapt to. So I do think that when you're younger, you can do that. So take advantage of it, because I think that that's where I got better results. And I look back at photographs and I definitely was big and I was definitely volumized. And a lot of that really did come down to the training volume. I spoke to other women in the sport and they would say that if they didn't train heavy consistently, their body would literally deflate from not having that constant work. So part of, your muscle is constantly pumped, constantly full of glycogen, then you do get that bigger look. So it's, that's that thing where now during COVID, a lot of the deflation is just because we're not necessarily putting the volume through our muscles, and then once we get back in the gym, it's gonna puff back up again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the cardio sessions, you want to know about the length of the cardio sessions?
Yep.
Because that's a really contentious one, because you'll go to a show and you'll hear everybody talking about the two, I did 2 lots of 1 hour cardio or whatever. And that, I never had to really go over about a 40-minute cardio session in one hit. Sometimes I would do 3 sessions a day, but what would be like a 40-minute, a 30-minute, and another 40-minute. That was probably an extreme. Now, the baseline would be 1 30-minute cardio session every day, and that would be for off-season or on-season just to maintain fitness. But, now that I've, got into the HIIT type of training, I actually think that if bodybuilders incorporated like a 45-minute HIIT session 3 times a week as their cardio, I think they would find that it's a lot more effective and that they don't have to be slugging it out for an hour at a time on the stairs to try to get the results that they want. Like, I know that I definitely noticed the increase in my metabolism by incorporating that HIIT style cardio training. And I also think that I think I might have spoken about this before. I think it benefits in the gym. Like I've definitely noticed my strength complemented by the type of overall body cardio, because it's not just sitting on a bike or walking on a treadmill, which is all lower body type cardio. And I used to joke when I was younger, like I wish I could walk on my hands, because I saw the impact of, the texture of my muscle would change from all the cardio that I was doing, because it's all leg based, and I would never get that same kind of hardness through my upper body. And I think now with doing, battle ropes and more push-ups and calisthenic type work and TRX bands and where you're using your upper body in that cardio high rep type of movement, I think that definitely impacts on keeping leanness in the upper body and keeping a harder texture to the muscle. So, cardio is one of those things where if you're going for a gentle walk, an hour, is able to do maybe 2 hours. If you're doing high intensity cardio, probably 45 minutes to an hour is probably about as much as what you can do, unless you are extremely fit. And then you can, then everything's relative because people obviously run marathons and things. But if you're weight training and you're trying to cut up for a comp and you're trying to maintain as much muscle mass as possible, then you don't want to be going for extended period of times. Like you want to kind of keep it short and sharp and effective.
So 45 minutes is...
45 minutes is like if you're doing HIIT, but if I was getting ready for a comp, I wouldn't do that every single day. And that's again how F45 structure their classes is that every second day they do the high intensity cardio, and then the days in between are resistance days. So if you're only doing that as your only exercise, then people kind of use that as their weight training. And that's the system that I'm using at the moment during COVID. But when I'm training in the gym, I use that weights day as what I call my weights cardio, which is, I'm starting to read a little bit of research around that. And that's a whole other fitness concept that, you have cardio, you have resistance training, but then what about that resistance plus cardio in the same session? Has a whole different bunch of effects. And I think it's really, really effective, again, at burning calories and improving your metabolism and improving your overall balance for, your insulin and, your other hormones that relate to repair and relate to stabilizing your, basically stabilizing your body against things like obesity and diabetes, metabolic disorders as they call them. So that's like a third type of training. And it doesn't stress your cardio system as much as the high intensity HIIT, but it definitely does work more on your muscular endurance. So it works a little bit on strength, a little bit on power and explosiveness, but a lot on muscular endurance, which is one of the fitness components, which is part of the ones that I call my life fitness components.
Okay. So just to recap, you gave us your routine in your 20s, but in your 30s, what did you do? How many rest days? You had 2 rest days in your 30s?
Yeah, more often than not, it would be that extra rest day, but it would be sequenced in 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. So the week would cycle, because obviously that when you do 6 days on, 1 day off, it perfectly fits into a week.
Yes.
And you do the same, like Saturday is always that. When I did my rest days, I can't remember how I did it now, but I know I always would make sure that my legs and my back were Saturday and Sunday, because they're my 2 biggest workouts, and they are the ones that I needed that extra time. I didn't want to have to be, coming into work. So I think what I did was I would do 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, or somehow I worked it out so that I got it sequenced so that I could always do those 2 body parts on a Saturday and Sunday and not have to cycle around. But I have done it where I have pushed it always like a day. So that makes me totally lose track because I don't know what day of the week it is.
Yeah.
Because I only know from what body part I'm training, whether it's Saturday or what it is. So,
and in your 40s?
I've pretty much kept that the same, except what I have done is I'm obviously not training for competition, so there's no on-season or off-season, and I have really split out like my hamstring day I've made into kind of a bigger day on its own. So therefore I definitely will cycle my days. Like I'm not really so fussed about what day I'm training, except I'm telling lies again. I always like doing legs, and I might switch them around. I might do back on Saturday and legs on Sunday, but I like those on the weekend.
Yeah.
Like I just like the fact that I have more time, because back is one of those body parts that because I don't have to think about overtraining, or I don't have to think about anything specific, I actually enjoy training back. So if I go to the gym and I feel like doing every exercise in that gym that's available for the back, then I'll probably do it because I just like it. And I'm very fussy on my back equipment, so I can only actually train at very specific gyms for that. If they don't have good back equipment, I'm done. And I do tend to use a lot more of the machines because I don't want to have to be, messing around, loading up heavy weights and doing barbells and barbell rows and things like that. But I love a good T-bar row. I love any of the isolateral type movements that you can do with your hammer strength type equipment. But yeah, I'm like, if I go to a gym, I kind of judge a gym off its back equipment. But yeah, it's more now about fun. And what I enjoy. So therefore, back I could train all day. So I don't know how long those sessions go for. But as I said, it's a different style of training that I'm doing now, and I will do very high reps, and I will just kind of go by feel of what I feel like I want to do. Whereas when I was training for comp, it was very specific because we had to design my body. So there's very specific things that I needed to do for that. So yeah.
Now, lastly, do you rock out when you're bodybuilding or training, or like how do you get in the zone?
I had it took me a lot of years to wear headphones because I always had a training partner. So you can't have a training partner and wear headphones because you need to be able to signal to them this is too heavy, take it off me. Like it's a communication thing. So when I started training, I guess alone or with a person, but not necessarily needing to be at that intense level, I'll put my headphones on. I will listen to anything it depends what mood I'm in. Like if I'm doing legs, I need to have high energy music, but not dance music. But
So like Spice Girls and stuff.
no, hell no. Oh goodness me, no.
Oh, you just came across as that kind of person.
I hope I don't. No, I would like something like I'm trying to think of like what I trained for a long time was NERD. So with now I'm going to forget his name. Oh, I can't. Yeah, it'll come to me in a minute. He looks like he's about 20, but he's actually 40. You know who I'm talking about. No, you don't.
No idea.
Damn it. But it was a very high energy, beaty kind of stuff. But then I might listen to something very calming because I'm very focused on legs day and I don't necessarily need the music to motivate me as much as I need to keep my mind focused. Yeah. So it has to. I can't stand heavy metal to train to. It just makes me upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll listen to any kind of like more underground hip hop type music.
Good on you.
But yeah, it really depends on the mood. And I'm just like, if I say someone like Blue, BLU, people don't know probably who I'm talking about. So you're looking at me really blank.
No idea.
And I'm trying to think of his name, but he's like the face of we'll have to cut this and I'll have to go and look it up and remember.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so good. All right. Really interesting stuff. Thank you very much, Christine. I'm sure all the listeners took a lot from this audio. Really appreciate it. We'll tune back in next time.
Well, thanks again. And if anyone has any questions, again, pop them in the messages below or how do they contact us?
Actually, the best thing that the listeners can do, there's tons of questions that people will be asking. So let's encourage you guys to be posting on the bottom of each different post what those questions would be and what you actually want to have answered. So we're going to set up Aussie, what do we call this?
Aussie Muscle Guru.
Aussie Muscle Guru.
We're having a day today, aren't we?
Facebook group, and that is a closed private group where people are going to be accepted and they're going to be able to ask those questions and we're going to answer them in these podcasts.
Awesome. I love questions.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you very much. Words of wisdom. If you like what you've heard, recognize that these tips, they're free. So show your support by becoming a loyal international protein customer by jumping online, hunt our product down and hit that buy now button. So once again, like, share and subscribe to our podcast so we can continue to bring you these episodes from our one and only Aussie Muscle Guru, 3 times world champion, Christine Enville.